Hi everyone, welcome to Curious Minds Academy. Today in this session we are going to discuss a new section, that is section F, professional ethics. Now before getting into the details of professional ethics, now let's understand what do you mean by the term ethics. Let's understand the term ethics. Ethics is a field of study. Just like our history, just like our geology, ethics is also a field of study that determines whether an action is right or wrong, whether an action is acceptable or not. So ethics is a field of study that determines whether an action is right or wrong. Okay, so this is what do you mean by the term ethics. Now let's move an inch further and discuss what business ethics means. Now, what do you mean by the term business ethics? When the same ethics, when this field of study, that is ethics, is applied in an organization or in a business environment, that is called business ethics. I repeat, when this ethics is applied in a business or in an organization, that is called business ethics. So right now we have understood the term what ethics means and what business ethics mean. Okay, now let's discuss how can we implement this business ethics in an organization, or let's reframe that question, how we can determine a business action or a business decision as a right decision or a wrong decision, or an acceptable decision or a not acceptable decision. How can we determine that? That's what my question is. We can determine an action as a right action or a right decision or a wrong decision by simply referring to the code of conduct of the organization. In order to determine a business decision is a right decision or a wrong decision, we can refer to the organization's code of conduct. Now, what does code of conduct mean? Code of conduct is simply a document referring to the do's and don'ts in an organization. What all things can the employees do in an organization? What all things can an employee cannot do in an organization? That document which specifies the do's and don'ts is called the code of conduct. So whenever there is a confusion regarding a decision, whether it is a right decision or a wrong decision, the employees or the management can refer to this document, that is organization code of conduct, to determine whether it is an acceptable one or it is a not acceptable one. So it is the code of conduct that one needs to refer. Now imagine the code of conduct may not be having answers to each and every situation, right? This code of conduct may not be that comprehensive that if any confusion arises and the employer refers to this code of conduct, and the code of conduct can readily give a solution to the problem. Okay, now the code of conduct may be silent in such a situation. So in that situation, in what situation? If the code of conduct is silent with reference to the response to a complicated situation, in such a situation, what do we need to do? In such a situation, we need to employ our thinking skills or decision making skills. If the code of conduct is silent, then we need to employ our decision making skills or thinking skills. Now, what do you mean by the term decision making skill or thinking skills? It simply means that one needs to apply morality or one's own virtues in every situation. If the code of conduct is silent with reference to a situation, one needs to employ their own decision making skills or thinking skills. Now, what do you mean by decision making or thinking skill? What does it involve? It involves applications of one's own morality or virtues. So, let's understand what do we mean by the term morality and what do we mean by the term virtues. Now, let's understand the meaning of the term morality and virtues with the help of an example. Imagine that there is a factory. Okay, this is our factory. This is the factory of XYZ company, and this factory has a manager. This is our manager. Now, it is the responsibility of this manager to dispose of the factory waste. It is a duty of this manager to dispose of the factory waste. Now, also imagine that there is a lake just behind this factory. Okay, and this XYZ company is not a company which has its focus towards environment, or let's say that the policies of this company are not environment friendly. That means this organization does not care how the manager or how anyone dispose of the factory waste. They can either dump the factory waste to this lake or they can dispose of it in an environment friendly way. The organization does not care about that. If the manager decides, okay, let me dispose of the waste by dumping into the lake, then the organization is pretty okay with it. So this XYZ company's policy is not environment friendly. Now let's see what the manager did with the waste. This manager was a man of character. He was a man of values. He didn't want to harm the environment in any way possible, and for that reason he disposed of the waste in an environment friendly way. He disposed of the waste in an environment friendly way. Now, even though the organization didn't care how he disposed of the waste, he chose to not to dump the waste into the lake but to dispose of the waste in an environment friendly way, which shows that this manager is a man of character. This manager is a man of values. So I can say that this manager is a man of qualities of man of virtue. So the virtues refers to the characteristics of an individual. This virtues refers to the characteristics of an individual. This manager is a man of character. He has that environment friendly attitude within him. He has that qualities within him, and those qualities are referred by the term virtues. So this virtues refers to the characteristics of an individual. Let me give you an example. If I say that this manager is an honest guy, this manager is a kind, is an honest guy, is a patient guy, all that refers to the characteristics inside that individual. So those characteristics are coined by the term virtues. Now let's twist the example. Let's assume that this XYZ company was an environment friendly company, or its policies was focusing towards an environment friendly waste disposal. Let's assume that. Now let's assume that this manager is not a man of character. He just want to dispose of the waste somehow. So he chose to dispose of the waste to lake. If given a chance, he would have disposed of the waste to this lake. But this organization environment friendly policy prevents him from dumping the waste to the lake. This is the only reason that prevents this manager from dumping the waste to the nearby lake. So he chose to dispose of the waste in an environment friendly way. If the organization was not strict about waste disposal, if the organization policies was not aligned towards an environment friendly way, this guy would have disposed of the waste to the nearby lake. But since the organization has environment friendly policies, that because of that only reason the manager chose to dispose of the waste in an environment friendly way. So the manager simply applied the ethical principles of the company. So the manager simply applied the ethical principles of the company. Now, this application of ethical principle is coined by the term morality. This application of ethical principles, he just chose to apply the ethical principle. Those qualities were not within him, just like virtues. The virtues were the qualities that were within him, but these morality are not within him. He just chose to apply the ethical principles of the company. So in that case, he has only morality and not virtues. He simply chose to apply the ethical principles, and that's the reason why this guy is a manager with morality and not virtues. In the earlier case, he was a manager with virtues. He had that characteristics within him. Okay, and in morality, those characteristics are not within him. He just chose to apply it. So that's the difference between morality and virtues. And you may be thinking that why I am discussing about this morality and virtues in such detail, right? For the past few minutes, I have been discussing the difference between morality and virtue, and I've given 2 examples for that as well. The reason why I'm explaining the difference between morality and virtue is it has been coming in the MCQ examination. When I attended my CMA examination, I have faced similar question, the difference between morality and virtue. So I don't want you guys to lose even 1 mark, and I don't want you guys to mug up anything. So that's the reason why I took the difference between morality and virtues in such a detailed way. And this is the example that you can remember and store in your mind to understand the difference between morality and virtues. So, if the organization code of conduct is not specific or does not guide the employee or the management regarding as to what response the employees or the management should take in response to a situation, then in such cases the management or the employees need to implement their own decision making skills or thinking skills. In other words, they need to implement their own virtues and morality to that situation so as to reach at an appropriate right decision or a right to take a right action. So they need to employ their own morality and their own virtues when if the organization's code of conduct is silent in this regard. So I hope that is clear. Summarizing it for you, ethics. What do you mean by the term ethics? Ethics is a field of study that determines whether an action is right or wrong. So, and what do you mean by business ethics? When the same ethics is applied in a business or in an organization, that's what you call business ethics. And how do we determine if an action that has been taken in an organization is right or wrong? Simply by referring to the code of conduct. And if the code of conduct is silent with reference to the situation, then how can we determine if an action is right or wrong? We can determine whether an action is right or wrong. If the code of conduct is silent, we can determine whether an action is right or wrong by employing our thinking skills or decision making skills. Now, what do we mean by employing thinking skills or decision making skills? That's what involves morality and virtues. What do you mean by morality? Morality is simply the application of ethical principles, and virtues refers to the characteristics of an individual. So I hope you have got a clear-cut idea about what ethics mean, what business ethics mean, and how do we employ business ethics in an organization. And if the code of conduct is silent, then how can we employ our decision-making skills or thinking skills? And what do you mean by morality and virtue, and what is the difference between morality and virtue? And I hope you will remember this example as well. And that's all from this session. Now let's meet in the next session with a new topic. Happy learning. Thank you.